a link for the YouTube stream into both Discord and Teams. Sorry for the delay. I messaged over on Discord that I was trapped in a bank waiting to get a document notarized. I thought I could like slip over, you know what I mean? It's like 2 minutes away. I thought I could like slip over and get back and maybe not so much. I mean, close, but when I got there and I realized there was only one, how can you be a bank and have only one notary? You know what I mean? That just to me doesn't make any sense. Hang on a second. All right. Coming up, Discord pals. There's the link for the YouTube stream. And teams. Come on. Teams is so slow. I feel like I'm rebooting Windows 3 somehow. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We're good. Are we good audio wise? Are we doing okay? Audio, video? Pretty happy here? All right. Well, let's see. How's everybody doing? How we doing? By my calculations, um, we are in week 10 of the semester right now, starting with, counting with at week 1. We got 10 weeks, and then we've got, after today, we've got 3 weeks, and then it's Thanksgiving, and then 2 weeks, and then we're done. Well, then it's finals, but I mean, no more class stuff. And I think that's pretty freaking okay. That's my opinion. That's my strongest opinion I'm going to offer today. Let's see. Anybody got any like lake breaking questions? I'm going to hit. Notice I've got anonymous mink is highlighting the hell out of everything, but you're welcome to jump in and as your various anonymous animals, add comments, add questions or things. Mark up the document. That's what it's there for. The link is. Should I drop another link? Let me drop another link into the chat right here. Let me see. Link copied. Yeah, and then I'm going to just drop that link in both spots, just in case, it's farther up and you don't happen to have it just handy or bookmarked or something like that. And then let me do the same over on Teams. Yeah. And you don't have to get over, you don't have to go over there, but in case it's helpful. Okay. Here's what I wanted to hit on. I went through this and notice I was so proud of myself that I actually popped up this other reading. I was kind of poking around trying to find, I mean, it's one thing to hear from me, and that's fine, and we just have kind of a casual conversation every week. I was talking to my daughter, who was a CS major for a while at a different school, and telling her about just the classes and telling her about 496R. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how if people are like if you're miserable about it or um yeah, how do we pin it? How do we pin it? Can anybody pin it? I just pinned it. I want to pin this message. Yep. So yeah, thanks, Aaron. I just pinned it. That's a really good suggestion. I don't know if you guys can, but I can and just did. Anyway, so talking to my daughter, and she was just like, uh, wow, I would have loved a class like that as a senior, 1 hour, that, kind of casual, do a little writing, but just talk about the actual world out there. She's like, I would have been great, I mean, that was kind of her cut on it. But I hope that there's some, feeling about that, I just hope it's not an utter and complete and bloody waste of everybody's time. I hope that it's at least interesting, and driven by you in terms of questions. But um, yeah, and then hopefully the writing's not real tough. The writing's not meant to be tough. It's meant to just think, just think a little bit, you know. And there's no external reason for anybody to not get an A, show up. Um, anyway, man, I hope the stream's good because I feel like my laptop is a little shaky, like I need to reboot and clear up all the memory leaks. Um, yeah, well, I appreciate the feedback, Cassidy, Faulted Path, James. It's a bit of a break for me as well, in terms of the regular load, and although a little more pressure on me to try to, dig into the well and not be completely, boring as hell. Um, let's hit the first thing. By the way, I just want to say on the weekend, two things happened that were amazing. One, on Friday night, my wife and I went to a concert, James Taylor and Jackson Brown. I don't know how many James Taylor fans there are in your younger generation. Wait, Riley, you were there? Was that amazing? uh, so are you a big fan, Riley? Yeah, fair enough. Nice. But great show though, right? So yeah, no, I'm a massive James Taylor fan. I go deep in the catalog on James, and less so on Jackson Brown, but he still had some. Jackson Brown had some monster hits in the '70s, and both of them just brilliant songwriters, in the singer-songwriter genre. Anyway, well, that was a highlight. And then Saturday night, okay, we'll see if anybody else there besides me and Riley. Um, and this one I'll bet nobody else was there. We then Saturday night we were at Wise Guys in downtown Salt Lake, to see Gary Goldman. You familiar with Gary Goldman? Anybody know Gary Goldman? He's been on everything. He had a HBO special called The Great Depression. Um, let me see if I can do. If I do, I'm going to drop this link on you. Man, I'm being really okay. I'm going to just drop this link. So if the conversation here is boring, you can just peel off and just watch Gary instead of me. Um, well, my system is being very slow. Anyway, there's Gary Goldman on Conan. This is one of my favorite bits. It's not. I don't know if it's the very favorite, but in terms of video clips that are bite sized, this is a very good introduction to Gary Goldman. So I recommend it. Okay, what do we got? 2.2 million views. So give that a watch when class is over. Okay, I'm sure YouTube will shut me down if I just play it. If I had my druthers, I'd just play it for you. And if we were in person, I would just play it for you. But enjoy Gary Goldman. I think he's very original, and for my money, and all due apologies and due deference to Jim Gaffigan and who's great, Brian Regan. I don't know who's great right now. I prefer Gary Goldman over all of those guys right now. So I think he's the funniest comedian working today. Ryan Hamilton is also very funny. Any other recommendations you've got on comedians you like, as long as we're just talking about Chuck's weekend? Oh, and Gaffigan. I can't argue with Gaffigan, Garrett. I mean, you're not going to get an argument out of me. I mean, he's Gaffigan is, for my money, one of the top five comedians working today. Okay, I don't know. I don't know Gabriel Iglesias. Seinfeld, I think, is actually not as funny, and Chappelle is more like a humorous political commentator. I don't find him funny. I don't laugh at Chappelle. I find him engaging and interesting. Bill Burr. Let's go, Bill Burr. Bill Burr, very caustic, very doesn't give a lot of Fs basically. But I really like Bill Burr, and that's probably an unpopular opinion. So, anyway, yeah, no. If you have any other recommendations, drop them in here. I'd love to. I love comedy. I love stand up. And so, if you have like recommendations that you would drop on there, I would love to hear your views on who do you like. Who do you like in comedy? And again, I'm going to check out Iglesias. I don't know. I don't think I know him. And I do feel like Seinfeld is overrated. And I get that he's a billionaire, but I just never find Seinfeld that actually funny. Kevin Hart, I find Kevin Hart just cracks me up. I don't know how funny I find him, but well, I guess that's, I'm now saying two things. I don't know how funny he is, but he does crack me up. Um, but okay, let's hit a few topics, and if you wouldn't mind, this is a very small participation, which suggests the others are either not into comedy at all, um, or you're just not there, or you're just feeling like shy this morning. Let's go. The keyword, secret word. Let's go with comedian. Should we just go with comedian or comedy? Does that sound good? That's our secret word, comedian or comedy. Cool. That works. That works. Like hitting it early, and then guys that show up in the last 5 minutes are like, "What's the password?" Yeah, snooze you lose, bro. Um, it ain't that hard. Just get here. All right. Okay. Nice, nice. Any links you've got? Any links you've got to comedy bits? I would love to watch them, and I did my share. You can do yours. Okay, let's hit the top one. I'm ready for some of the questions. What algorithms and data structures, CS theory things, should we keep up on, if not using in our current position in industry? Man, I put that one first because I felt like it would be fairly quick to hit, and I kind of came up with I do know Josh Blue. Okay, yep, I do know the guy, and Kellen Erskine as well. I do recognize them at least. And Dry Bar, by the way, really has, I think, some very funny guys, comedians, not just guys, obviously, but comedians coming through. Um, yeah. So okay, what I'm gonna. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. It's almost never going to be when you get through. Yeah. When you get through. Um, you get through your degree, right? And you go through all these theory classes. By the way, the reason you go through the theory classes is because it's in there. It kind of sticks, you know, loosely. It doesn't go in, you don't wander around the rest of your life just going, oh, Huffman coding, oh, Hamming distances and the dining philosopher's problem. Thank you, Dijkstra. Typically you don't walk around, nor do you walk around, sort of needing to just like pop that out, right? But if you're designing operating systems, low level stuff, you do have to worry about deadlock. You do have to worry about circular hold and wait. There are ideas that show up. Um, but what I would recommend is that somehow you keep copies of the material that you've been through. Now, granted, you guys do a lot of stuff, everything's online. But man, if it were me, I would be keeping some kind of archive, a PDF or something of every class you take. A little late now, I know you're graduating. But then when you go to pivot to a new job, you can go back and kind of review. Because here's the thing, while it's true that um, being a software developer in 2021 involves a lot of Googling, that's absolutely true. And it's not an insult to go look stuff up on Stack Overflow. You know what I mean? Because part of the reason is because back in the day, everything had to be meticulously documented. And now it's like you can sort of like document it a little bit and then put that out on your blog or put it out on a website, and it's flexible, and then somebody's going to change it as you find bugs in it. It's more dynamic. Back in my day, when I started to write software professionally in the 80s, the only source you had was the documentation, the book basically, that came with the software. Like, and we're talking typically hard copy book. And that book had to be right. And if it wasn't, you were kind of screwed. Or you had to just go figure out how to make it work, even though the documentation was incorrect. It was pretty high cost if the doc was incorrect. Today, number one, you don't expect to go get a book. You expect to see it online. And because it's online and because the cost of repairing a mistake is relatively low, track my logic here, because the cost of repairing a mistake is relatively low, the utter care with which you document, think about it, right? It naturally goes down, right? If you got one shot, the quality's got to be high. If I can field upgrade the doc just by making a change to my blog post or to my online doc, I'm not as freaked out about it has to be right. Okay. Um, yeah, John Mulaney, agree. Very funny guy. Very, very funny guy. Um, and so the interesting thing, um, sorry, I got distracted now thinking about John Mulaney. Um, very funny. But anyway, so it is reasonable to go look stuff up online, to go hit Stack Overflow or when I'm blanking. What are the other ones? Stack Overflow is probably the big one. Um, yeah, whatever. Just Googling, right? What's the other? What am I drawing? A blank. Where do you guys go when you need to like? But here's the point. If you're like how to be, you can't go to Stack Overflow and Google how to be a good designer of operating systems. If you don't understand what an operating system is and how it works and what the ideas are, the reason you go to class and you take these classes is to get the big picture idea stuck in your head pretty firmly. Then you actually know what to do. You know what I have never talked about was the orders of ignorance. A bunch of you have had. Let me just. I'm going to drop a quiz, and I just need like a yes no. me see. Quiz. I have previously witnessed Dr. K's speech on Okay, I just dropped a quiz. And all you do is go to that and put a reaction of a Y or an N. Um, I will seed it. There we go. and then next up, for those that are interested, I could do a speech one of the days, or maybe even a couple of days, if it's interesting to talk about the orders of ignorance. That sort of requires some insight from those um, who have witnessed it. And what I'm curious about, 3, 6, 24. Yeah, we got 4 non-respondos. Yeah, so right. So Danny just said, yeah, I'm going to give an amen on what Danny just said. Um, Learning what terms to Google is the difference between experience levels. Right. Experience doesn't mean you know all the things. It means you know what you don't know. You know what you lack, but it takes a framework to know what you lack. Like if you don't even know that deadlock is a thing, you cannot ask the questions about how to take care of deadlock. If you've never had any courses about testing or done testing in classes, then you have no idea that it's even a thing. And you just write code and you think you're done. And it's experience level that gives you the ability to be paranoid enough. Um, yeah, BB Goose, the question was above on the Discord chat, whether you've seen the Dr. K's orders of ignorance. So only um, let me see. Yeah, only 5 have actually seen it. For those who have seen it, how many of you feel like that really is the next question? Would that be? I mean, it's a question of use of time. We don't have to do that, or we can do other stuff. But I think relative to understanding, um, that orders of ignorance are about knowing what you don't know. Okay, knowing what you don't know. That takes a certain knowledge base to understand what you don't know, right? If you're completely ignorant of the entire topic, you literally don't know what you don't know. You don't even know it's a thing. You don't even know what the questions are. So let's come back to that. I'm going to put it over here. Um, and let's actually, I can do this. Yeah, let's do the orders of ignorance. Okay. But yeah, so the reason that we study these things is not because you walk around for the rest of your life with all those details in your head. You do it because there's a residual component or a chunk of it that sticks around, that does stay, and it creates a framework. And the framework allows you to ask the right questions, to have some sense of what languages are and how they work and what are the pieces of languages. And you're like, oh, I don't really remember all the ways of passing parameters. But you do remember that there were multiple ways of passing parameters, both in and out. Or you remember, I don't remember everything about the stack, but you do remember that there was a stack. I don't remember all about memory management, but you do remember that there was memory management. And that's the key. You don't need to remember everything, but there are kind of framework things that you should walk out with. And, your degree is worth something if you do walk out with it. Then later on, you understand, as Danny said very aptly, learning what terms to Google is the difference between experience levels. That's very well said, Danny. Um, and it's the same reason that if you ever noticed that you ever gone you're the technical ones, right? You're the technical one in the family. You all are, right? For the most part. And unless you've got some rock star that's in your family who does everything and you just get a pass. But you ever notice that you're, let's say, take somebody technically naive like your mom or your dad. Go even stronger. Go your grandpa or your grandma. Google's available to them, but for some reason, when they're trying to program the VCR or when they're trying to get the dumb app to work, or their smartphone or, whatever, their smartwatch, or just they're trying to get their Fitbit installed, change the clock on the fish tank. For some reason, they can't figure it out. Number one, and then number two, when they go to try to Google it, they can't even Google it right. Isn't that weird? I'm not trying to be insulting. I just, do you know what I'm trying to say? That they don't know what to Google, right? Um, yeah, Danny, Google lets documenters be lazy. Yeah, so we got the IT, who's IT at home, right? But have you noticed that you can Google and pop the answer? And it's not even when it's a technical topic. Somebody's like, so who's the 34th president of the United States? Like, I have no idea, right? But like, for some reason, if it's a race on Google, you'll win. Why? Why? And I think it's because of your CS training. It causes you to distill down all the things you've learned about tree structures and decision trees and all the things that it just trains your mind to think in a certain systematic and logical way. And then when you couple that with specific domain knowledge, that's how you know how to go to Stack Overflow and ask a very specific question. But the embarrassing questions on Stack Overflow for me are the ones that are like, how do I write a compiler? Oh, really? You know enough to ask that question, but know so little that you would ask that that's the question. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know what it is. It's almost like a learned helplessness. Can someone it cries out college undergrad begging somebody to write, his compiler for him. That's what it cries out, you know? No. So don't denigrate Googling things, but understand that there's Googling things badly and there's Googling things well. There's Googling things in an informed posture, and there's Googling things in a really uninformed and maybe a little bit, goofy basis. Right, Danny. Yeah, better question. What tutorial is best to learn to write a compiler? Um, or are there any books you'd recommend, or online tutorials, or principles that you know whatever? But the more specific the question, the more based in knowledge it is, and the more that you're asking somebody to guide you to where you can do the work, the less sort of learned helplessness is manifest. Um, Cassidy, my favorite thing about Stack Overflow is how aggressive the mods are about things, moderators. I made a mistake and shared a code snippet on Stack Overflow, and the admin said I messed up so bad he's leaving my question up as an example of what not to do. Ow! Ow! How did that make you feel, Cassidy? Like you picked up a little scar tissue, maybe? Like, okay, right? Um, let's see. By the way, so Alex, thanks for the meme. I had a situation at the beginning of this year. I had this crazy vertigo where the room was spinning like 50 miles an hour. And I did a bunch of research on Google, right? But I'm not an idiot and I understand taxonomies, I understand frameworks, right? And I did a bunch of search, and I basically came up with what I believed I had, which was vestibular neuritis. And then I went into a doctor, and the doctor was, I learned later because I then later did some Googling about the doctor and found out that his ratings were abysmally low. I just went to Instacare, and he was really dismissive and insulting and kind of bad mouthing. And at some point I said, well, here, help me to understand something. Because I also realized that I'd like to be involved and actively engaged in my own healthcare. You know what I mean? I'm not just going to be so much cattle and walk in and expect the doctor to like care as much about me as me, nor can the doctor know what's going on inside of me. And there's a lot of how are you feeling? Can you rate, when you're like, can you rate your pain? Well, that's very subjective, right? Brian Regan, say 8. And anyway, but I said, well, help me understand something with the diagnosis that you're talking about, which I can't even remember exactly what it is. It One of the typical aspects of that is that it behaves like this, and there's none of that going on in what I'm doing. But what I've got is a thing that when I do this, then like the stuff never goes away. Like that one is positionally dependent, and the one that I you know understand, and is one of those like really defensive, right? And he just kind of goes, if you want a second opinion, you're free to go to another doctor. That was, and that was the tone. That was the tone. And I was like, wow, bit of an a-hole, little defensive, right? So he prescribes me some stuff. 48 hours later, nothing has changed. And then I go to the ER because everything's the same, or if not worse. I go to the ER. They do very systematic, right? It's a decision tree, and they're doing this methodology. And when they're done, guess what I've got? Vestibular neuritis, which basically just means a little infection just deep in the inner ear. Um, uh, Thanks for the Ben Affleck meme. Yeah. um, so Aaron, no, it was the Instacare in Lehigh over by the Smiths, near the Smiths anyway, west of the Smiths in Lehigh off that Timpanogos Highway. But no, there was something about the attitude because I've had other conversations with doctors where doctors who understand the orders of ignorance, they understand that there's a crap ton that they don't know and that they're doing their best to try to help you and to diagnose it, but that it can still be a lot of different options. There's still a lot of um, dynamics, and I've had doctors as well where I'm like, I'll explain what I'm thinking, they'll be like, well, I think your thinking is right on. Here's something else to consider. So, but today, honestly, uh, Googling and medical sites and stuff are so good that if you're also very analytical, above average intelligence, very analytical, and understand sort of taxonomies, um, you can actually get kind of close. What you can't do is perform an appendectomy or be licensed to prescribe medication. I'm not denigrating doctors. I got my number two son's in med school right now as an example, and maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe I could still denigrate doctors with a child in med school, but I'm just saying, you know, that there's a point of arrogance to think, it, that there's nothing you can know. There's a great deal you can know by Googling things with some point of reference, right? Um, anyway, yeah, and I like BB Goose. I like I've seen that meme before. Um, yeah, let me see. Yeah, Alex, good advice on getting a recommendation for a good doctor. Um, yeah, Jack Zach. Whenever someone in the family asks if I can help with a tech issue, I was followed up with depends on what it is. Anyway, I didn't really think we were going to get into the orders of ignorance and spend this much time on that first question, but just understand that I wouldn't spend any time deliberately keep, quote unquote, keeping up. Okay. Um, I wouldn't worry about it because when it's time, you're going to revisit the space and you're going to dive deep. That's what's going to actually happen. Um, oh, also, by the way, as long as I said quote unquote, I want to just put it in the chat here. I did say quote unquote and not, what are the variants? Quote and quote, not quote end quote. Now, I'm willing to be challenged on these. If any of you are in 305G, you know that one of the core rules is that everybody can be wrong, including me and maybe especially me. But I'm going to drop these in there and ask for some confirm or deny. One of my pet peeves, and if I'm wrong, I want to know. I want to know so I can change it if I'm actually wrong on that. But I'm pretty sure the proper expression is quote unquote and not quote end quote and not quote end quote. Um, Now that's different from, I'm talking about when you say the expression quote unquote and you do the scare quotes. I'm not talking about quote to be or not to be, that is the question, close quote, or to be, or quote to be or not to be, that is the question, end quote. That's a different issue. I'm talking about the singular expression quote unquote, which is basically an advanced tag with no closing tag, right? Yeah, exactly. I think you beat me to it, BB Goose. Um, if you say quote, then the expression, then a close quote, you're speaking in markup tags. What does Google say? It's referring to the punctuation mark. End quote is definitely correct. Oh, if it directly follows the word quote, it's unquote. In other words, the phrase is quote unquote, not quote end quote. And it's also not, they didn't even say it, and I've heard it, quote and quote, quote unquote. I think it's important to get these little things right just because. Okay, enough of that. I love that we have these little chats. I'm done with that one. Did we talk about this one, mapping out a career path? Let me do this for another, what do we got? Wait, when do we end? No, it's 7 more minutes. And by the way, this is another example. Because you understand XML and HTML, you understand tags, so you can think of and analyze this issue of quote unquote, and in terms of tags, markup tags or not, or like a pre-markup tag that doesn't have a closing tag, like BR. What are some other tags that don't have closing tags? Like the version stuff in HTML. I don't think there's closing tags on that stuff. Anyway, advice on mapping out a career path. There's a couple of jokes, right? There's a couple of sort of expressions, memes, jokes. One is, life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. There's another one that goes, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. It's an old joke. Um, so there's a part of me that says, man, go ahead and make plans. Go ahead and make plans and work to make those plans happen. But don't get butthurt when the plans take a turn. That to me is the key. For example, I first got the idea in my head that I was going to get a graduate degree, that I really wanted to have a grad degree. I first got that idea in my head when I was, keep in mind, I came from Oh, that is so good. Cassidy. Okay, Cassidy wins the Discord chat today. Cassidy, you won the chat today. Hands down. That's fantastic. Um, Point of trivia, the Tower of Pisa is banana shaped. It's not actually straight and leaning, it's actually banana shaped. Look that up and have some fun with it and then ask yourself why. Um, so I was in my early 20s when I was still at the University of Iowa, uh, 23, 24, when I got the idea in my head that I wanted to get a grad degree. I grew up in Cornfield County, Iowa, and you're probably asking, wait, is there really a Cornfield County, Iowa? And the answer is, don't be an idiot. No, of course, there's no Cornfield County, Iowa. However, there are cornfields and plenty of them where I grew up. In fact, I grew up on a dirt road main street with a corn with uh, seed corn, no, feed corn right across the street, or soybeans, depending upon the year and the crop rotation. I swear to you, I am not making that up. And anyway, so then, and there was no college education anywhere in my family. So I got that idea in my head. Somewhere after, when I was 25, I transferred from Iowa to BYU as an undergrad. And somewhere in that process, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to get a PhD for a bunch of reasons. So I eventually finished my PhD when I was 38. But here's the thing, there was a statement, I first heard it. I don't know if it was original to Stephen R. Covey, but it's where I first heard it. And it was from a book that he wrote entitled Principle Centered Leadership. It was actually a precursor to Seven Habits. And anyway, the question that Covey asked was, what happens if you climb the ladder? You get in, you're on the corporate ladder. And a lot of times if we're ambitious, we just wait to see what the nearest ladder is, then we jump on it, we start climbing. But he said, what if you get to the top of the ladder only to discover that the ladder was not leaning against the correct wall, that you busted your butt to climb the ladder and found out it was leaning against the wrong wall, a wall you didn't actually want to be on top of. Well, you also wasted all the opportunity. Now life goes on and you get to still go do that. It's not gone forever, but at least that moment, effort expended, not successful. Um, at really meeting the life objective that you were trying to do. So there is a part where I think sitting back and asking yourself what you really want to do with your life. And some of those things will sink deep in your heart. And when they sink deep into your soul, that's usually an indicator you can't get it out of your head. And it's never too late. You know what I mean? Like I had I mean, just as a stupid example, um, I always wanted to. I played guitar from when I was 18, and I'm in guitar. I always wanted to play the bass. I just love the sound, the bass lines, love the place the bass, in music. And I picked up a used, decent but not amazing bass in my late 30s, but I didn't get a nice bass till I was around almost 60. Was when I found, because I had money. At your age, you got no money. My age, I got money. But do you just say, "Well, I'm old now and decrepit. It's too late to have a nice bass"? No, bullcrap. It's never too late, right? Because the goal is to constantly be doing things that are interesting, and that doesn't end just because you become ancient. You know, there's still life and adventure and love and passion and enjoyment and learning and stretching. None of that goes away. So whatever you do, think about your career as things that resonate with your life. You know what I mean? That are the things that you really, you know, What do you really, really want to do? Um, if you can enjoy what you do and get paid for it, that's a great thing. That's a really, really amazing thing. Few people really, truly get to do that. I think that if you love CS at any level, there are things you can do with it that you can get paid. But I would say figure out what you really love to do and then understand the economics of that career path. You want to be a CS and you want to be a technical writer, do it, but understand the economy of it, you know. But figure out what you love in this field and then set your sights on doing it and then do what you have to do to be ready to do it. That's sort of a to me that's kind of like plan it out, be deliberate, but then be willing to shift. Deliberate plus shift. So let's come back to that, and maybe I'll do a little order of ignorance next time. I'm good. I'm done. I'm out. Take care. Enjoy our little visits, and good luck with all your crap in all the other classes.